the offense or this
Yes.
matchup in particular?
Yeah, I think when you look at at least at the time I've been here for most of the time Taysom's been, and listen, when he touches the ball, he's on the field, it affects the game tremendously, and he doesn't even sometimes have to get the ball. Him being on the field and him, kind of like I thought Clint did a phenomenal job in the way we used them today. He ran it, he threw it, he caught it. And so when you're defending that and you're not sure where he's going to line up and all that, it neutralizes the defense a little bit. You maybe get some more, vanilla looks than if he's not on the field. And so, I think he had 8 catches and 7 carries and 2 pass attempts,
Hello, Saints fans, Who Dat Nation. I'm going to have to start off tonight explaining kind of how the last few days went for me, because my intention tonight was to talk a lot about what's upcoming in the next 6 weeks. Maybe even bring in a little Darren, Rizzzi, Interim. Will that work out? Conversation. Do we need to start looking now? Who would we be looking at? That sort of thing. And then Ross Jackson happened. And what I have up there is a tweet he sent out a few days ago. And it's the 16 teams in the NFC and their point differential for the season up until this doesn't include today, obviously, but I kind of have some updated stuff with that. And his little note on it says, what stands out to you? And, I like a challenge. So I'm just kind of looking at it. And the first thing I noticed that, number 13 at -30. So point differential, the Falcons are -30. They've given up 30 more points than they've scored this season, yet they have a winning record and they're leading our division. Somehow at 4-7, we're +2, which shocked me, right below Chicago, who's now +4 as of today, but at the time +7, who I think had 4 wins at the time. And then the Bucs are an even 500 team at +13. So I'm like, hey, that doesn't make sense. Logically, your better teams are going to have a plus point differential. Your worst teams are going to be negative. To dive in a little deeper, it's find out that Atlanta at that point was the only team with a winning record that had a negative point differential. And actually, Tampa Bay had a losing record at the time because the Bears, the Saints, Tampa Bay, and all 3 in a row, and they're above at least one 500 team at the time, which was the Rams, were all positive. Normally at this point in the year, you would think something like this would follow along the old adage of, by the time you get halfway, 2/3 into the season, your record is your record says who you are. Then you look at something like this and go, well, Atlanta's record says they might be the best team in the division, but when you're looking at points for against and subtracting points against, arguably 2 teams in the division are better, but no, they're not because their record isn't better, obviously. So you start scratching your head going, how in the hell could this happen? And how can it be that far off? And then when you look at the 500 teams going into this week, there's a huge range. 49ers were +28. Rams -26. They're both playing 500 ball. So it got me to thinking, it's like, how important is or unimportant is the +2 point differential for the Saints? How do we get on the positive side of that, albeit barely, and still be 3 games under 500? I mean, it's a computation that just doesn't compute. At least I don't think so. So that was suddenly I found myself for several days in this weird black hole of just trying to figure out how that happens. Focusing mostly in the Saints, but I would look at other teams and I'm looking at their stats. Where are they overall in the league? And various teams are all over the place, seemingly independent of their record and their actual point differential. I was looking at opponents' stats, opponents' record. Is there anything there? All kind of stuff. So I just kind of started focusing on the Saints, and the first thing I picked was injuries. It's like, was our injury issues having a problem with this? And I was going to pull various players and see what their point differential was. when they played as opposed to when they didn't play. I only got to one. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I started with Taysom Hill just based on the fact of, oh my God, what he did on last Sunday against Cleveland. My intention was to do like Carr. McCoy really has only played two and a half games this year when you think about the first two, and then a few plays against Philly and roughly about half a game against Cleveland last week. But it was like, we'll look at Carr. We'll look at, find those guys that is probably looking at maybe at this point, roughly half the games played, or maybe a third, somewhere in there. So he started with Taysom, like I said, and looked at, he was out 4 weeks injured. Lost all 4 of those games, and our point differential was negative 63. And so, well, let me look at the other 7 games, and they're all aparts. Game 2, he left early against Dallas with an injury. He sat out, obviously, game 3, and then came back game 4 against Atlanta and left early again, injury, and then missed the next 3 after that. In those 7 all or part games that he played in, our point differential was plus 65 for a grand total of plus 2. I'm like, is that just a weird coincidence? Is there something really tied together in that? I said, all right, let me go back and look at game by game. Before he didn't play, we were -3 to Philly in the loss, -13 to Kansas City in the loss, -24 to Tampa Bay, -23 to Denver. In the remaining 7 games that he played in, plus 37 against Carolina, plus 25 in Dallas, roughly half a game. -2 in the loss to Atlanta, roughly about a quarter. In fact, I don't even know if he made it that far. -18 in the loss to San Diego, -1 in the loss to Carolina, then +3 against Atlanta, plus 21 against Cleveland. You kind of going, is there anything really to that? I mean, it's kind of like you're still like, So only go look at his snaps in those 7 games. 21 against Carolina, 28 against Dallas. Again, roughly about half the game. Only 15 against Atlanta. 29 against San Diego. 36 against Carolina, 23 against Atlanta, 33 against Cleveland. I'm like, well, he's getting a fair amount of snaps, except in the one game where he got real re-injured early in Atlanta. And for the most part, they're all there. Let me go look at what is his totals. And I said total touches. So I was counting every way he could conceivably touch the ball. Carries, catches, pass attempts, returns, kickoff returns. And there's a lot of math and going back and looking on this one. So I'm not 100% this is accurate, but I think it's fairly close enough to be relevant. It's about 56 total touches and about 463 total yards. And I'm like, yeah, I can see, especially since it comes across so many different ways going, yeah, when he's on the field, and like Darren Rizzzi was saying, that's why I played that little clip, something we've talked about here about how much stress he can just, even if he's not touching the ball, when he is on the field, when he is in the huddle pre-snap, how much stress it can put on a defense. And I started looking at the old axiom. If you remember last year, right after we beat Indy, somebody threw out the stat, he had 7 rushes in that game, 7 carries. That when Taysom had 7 carries or more, we were 17-1, I believe. Yeah, 17-1. After the Indy game last year, he had 3 more games with 7 or more carries. One was Chicago, which we won barely. Then we had the loss to Atlanta, he did it. And then the fiasco against Detroit, he did it. So 1 and 2 the rest of the way. We're now 19-3 when he gets 7 carries, because Cleveland was the first game where he totaled 7 rushes. Every other game, now his combined touches, especially like in Cleveland, was 18. He had Carolina, he had 10. but that was combined in every conceivable way he could touch the ball. But when you focus just on him running the ball, Cleveland was the first time he got 7. So I keep looking at this going, it's probably 100% coincidence that the point differential pretty much equals to when he's going to play and specifically when he's heavily involved in the offense. Undoubtedly in the Cleveland game, that's really an outlier. The game that he had there was historic. But that was what fresh in my mind. That's what was fresh in my mind. That's what started me down this path. And it's quite a different when he's not playing at least. I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway going, look, it's almost like you have a sample size, I think, large enough to almost say, look, when he's not on the field, we have very little chance to win. When he's on the field, we're giving ourselves a chance, especially when we use him and use him correctly. So trying to pull this back where I was originally wanted to go with our talk tonight was that he is an important part of the offense. There's no doubt, but I mean, so's your starting quarterback, so's your starting center, who hopefully he is back. It sounds like that they pulled him in Cleveland just as a precaution, and everything's okay with him. With your fill-in receivers, getting MVS involved in the offense has been huge. You didn't really need Kamara in Cleveland, and kind of a good thing because you kind of limited his touches, and more importantly, the number of times he got hit, letting him rest a little bit through the bye week. So another important thing, Taysom really took a load off Kamara. I think Kamara needed, some help there in that category because lately he had been logging so much trying to keep our offense going. And Taysom and Alvin are really the two guys that the offense is going to run through. But you can't have another backup quarterback, I don't think, situation develop over the next 6 weeks. You can't go down another big play receiver because you kind of only have one left, more or less, right now. Your backup running back situation isn't great, although I really wish they would let Mims touch it a little more than he does to see what he could do. But we've been having that conversation for weeks. It looks like it's just not going to happen. But I think the most important thing you have with Taysom is he's the one guy the offense goes through that the defense just doesn't know where he's going to be or what he's going to do. He's the guy that can just stress him. As we've talked about here, and Rizzzi said in that little clip I showed, he's the guy that can keep him in vanilla defenses, which is a lot easier for our offense to operate against. It's a lot easier to call plays against. It's a lot easier for Carr to have pre-snap reads, be able to make post-snap adjustments. It's easier. It's just easier for everyone than when defenses are getting exotic. And over that bad stretch when we were playing so horrible, part of it was we couldn't overcome for various reasons. Some of it our own, some of it coaching, some of it just bad luck due to injury. But they were getting, I don't want to say overly exotic, but they could do a lot of stuff against us that we just couldn't handle. Well, Taysom, I think, is like the equalizer of, well, now the offense is going to do a whole bunch of stuff you can't handle. Just, I wouldn't say necessarily through one guy, but he can create problems. He's the guy that can decoy. He's the guy that can make the defense see ghosts. He's the guy that they can overcommit to trying to stop when they think he's getting the ball and suddenly somebody else gets it. I like to see that creativity pass through other players in the offense. We know Alvin can do it. And again, really couldn't do it as much with Alvin because in that stretch, things were so bad. He just had to line up its tailback and carry the ball a lot from there. Like to see him get back in routes from the receiver position. We used to use him that way a lot, very effective. And, he can still do it. I'd like to see a little creativity with MVS because he is right now, at least the first 2 games that we've had him out on the field, more or less what he's been his whole career. I mean, I know he's 37, 8 years in the league, something like that. But he's been that high average catch guy, big play guy. Not a lot of catches, not a lot of looks coming his way. He's never really been a one. Well, he's going to have to be a one the rest of the way. Let's see what else he can do. Can he handle short passing game? Can we get a little exotic with him? Creative. Maybe line him up in the backfield. Let him run a route coming out the backfield. Let him touch the ball in some kind of way, like Rashid could do on reverses, and hell, if you can line him in the backfield every now and then, pitch him the ball and see if he can outrun the corner and turn it upfield. I think it's would help our offense a lot if we could figure out some stuff like that to do, because I keep going back to the Atlanta game when Raheem Morris just came out after halftime after MVS torched him 2 long times. And he basically said, well, we're going to put AJ Terrell on him and AJ Terrell on him and just take him out the game. They did. And they did. So since he's not really a one, and some teams will look, we're just going to put our best corner on him and try to shut him down that way and be effective. Then you got to find other ways to get him the ball. But I think that Taysom approach, the beast mode approach, it's the best way to get our offense going, at least now. We may get some more players back, some players we're needing, especially at the skill position. That'll help. Like I'm saying, getting a little more flexible with Alvin and MVS because they're our next two. Looks like we've been using the tight ends more lately. Keep that going as long as our offensive line can hold. Now, we'll say that I think the reason why I'm focusing so much on the offense is I think this kind of has to be done with the offense, because I don't know how much more you can really do with the defense. And what I mean by that is, I don't think you have a lot of play in being able to move talent around. Although they have done a better job of, I think, kind of resetting who plays what, how many snaps the last couple of games. And I think it showed that you're getting some better play out there. Still too many big plays they give up. See Cleveland, 2 big pass plays are the way they put up 14 points. If you can just shave that down a little bit, because our offense, and this is why I'm tied on the offense, I'm going to have to assume our offense is going to keep making big plays. Because if they don't, we're in a lot of trouble. Then the defense has to become a top 5 defense again. I just don't know if they're capable. But I think if your offense can get going over these last 6 games, your defense can give you enough, like they did the last 2 games. And that they have it in them to stiffen up late in the game like they did against Atlanta and shut it down. They have enough to keep Cleveland, despite the 2 big plays, basically in check till the offense finally got going in the fourth quarter. I think that's the 2 combinations you're going to have to see coming down the 6-game stretch, because finally tying it into the stuff that I wanted to talk about. Of those 6 games, I think minimum you have to win 5, if not all 6, to have any type of legitimate shot. And just kicks and giggles, the point differential that we're rolling into. Rams are playing right now, so still using last week's. They're 5-5 and -26. Last I saw the game, they were up 7-6 on Philly. The second quarter, I think. So long way to go in that one. Commanders, remember talking about this little chart we were looking at here earlier? They say that at this point in the season, your record says, you are which record says you are. Commanders at plus 65 and sitting 7-4. Play Dallas. Don't remember what their record was. 2 wins, 3 wins, something like that. At minus 106. Dallas pulls the upset by 1. Bizarre game, and they were lucky to win it, but hey, they still won it. So Commanders all of a sudden fall to 7-5, and they're plus 57, just as a point of reference. Packers moved to 8-3 plus 65. Raiders 2-9, negative 108. Bucks get back to 500, 6-6 plus 36. See, so I think what you got here is a lot of, except for maybe the Commanders, but and the Packers, everybody else in this list are a lot like the Saints in the aspect of whatever's going on with the individual team, whether it's stuff out of their control, like the injuries, stuff in their control, their level of play, their coaching, their roster management, whatever. They're all kind of in the same boat, I feel like. I think the Bucs exude this in a lot of different ways when you watch them from week to week. Even Atlanta, who we don't have on the schedule anymore, but like the Saints, just like it's almost like when the circumstances are right, they can play good football, and if you don't play good football with them, they can run you out the building. By the same token, they can play bad football and things don't go their way and you can run them out the building. And then every now and then you got a game kind of in between where we've had about 3 or 4 of those, one scored. Jesus, if one thing just goes our way, especially in the last 2 minutes, we come out of there with a win. Instead, we end up with a loss. Looking at it, I think the Rams fall into all 3 of those categories. I think you can run them. I think they can run us. And I think it come down to a one-score game where the wrong thing happens is going to decide who wins or loses. Almost tempted the way the Commanders have been playing lately to put them in that category. Not quite sure, but they're not as strong as they were just even 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were talking about, hey, that's an automatic loss. I'm not so sure. Dallas rolled into their building today and escaped with a win. Can be done. Packers are looking so good right now. We have to go up and play them in Lambeau on a Monday night. I would say that's probably the one I worry about the most. I feel like should beat the Raiders. I feel like the Bucks are the same thing as the Rams. Everything goes right, we can run them. Everything goes wrong, they can run us. Somewhere in the middle, it may come down to a play or two late in the game. Could be anywhere along that. The one team I did not put on here is the Giants, because dear Lord, if we lose to the Giants, then I'm going to be back on fire and get rid of everybody. They are legitimately terrible. The Raiders aren't very good. I feel like that one should be in the bag too, but at times they look like they know what they're doing. So if we go in there thinking it's in the bag and we're going to win, we're going to have a long day. If not, I think we can handle them pretty easily. And it's all really and truly, I wanted this to be mostly about Rizzzi, but I definitely want to bring it back to Darren Rizzzi because, and in a way, I'm glad I fell into the Ross Jackson black hole of all that and then kind of discovering going, there may be some solid evidence to the importance of Taysom being on the field and touching the ball, both having him completely available the whole game and not having him available and just struggling to figure stuff out. Other factors involved, I admit, it's not by no means a scientific algorithm that explains everything. But I think there's some strong footing on the theory. I think he definitely falls into the category you need him on the field. I think everybody agrees on that. But like, there may be some guys you thought were irreplaceable that Taysom might have jumped ahead on top of the list of irreplaceable, overtaking him. And I think the thing with Rizzzi, like I said, I go back and forth. Interim coaches know I don't want to fall back into the trap of repeating the stuff that we have been doing in the past and thinking it's going to work when it doesn't. It's just that vibe, everything. But at the same time, thinking whether it's him or we come from the outside on coach, I think there's some very important stuff before you even get into X's and O's and roster management and all that needs to be addressed. We've talked about this, you got to change the culture. Got to clean up the stupid stuff that we did or do. And I'll say did because we started cleaning up the last 2 games at least. Just the stupid shit we would do to cause us to lose games that never should happen ever. And if it happens once, it should only happen once, not game in, game out. You know the list. It was long and ugly for a long time. And kind of tied into that, one of the ways that you can solve that problem is just play fundamentally sound football. Even the little missed tackles, not breaking the huddle with intensity, whatever, all those little, some of them bigger, I shouldn't say little things, but smaller things to big things that really and truly should be ingrained into these football players at this point. And I'm sure they are, but I think that goes back to culture. It just wasn't reinforced and they weren't held accountable. And I think eventually we got what we got. And probably the person most responsible isn't here anymore. The person replacing him, and it could be Darren Rizzzi, it could be somebody else. That has to be the focus. All that has to be cleaned up first. And then the last thing, whoever the coach is, he's got to empower his coaches to be able to make changes when necessary, whether it's autonomy, because he's kind of standing back and letting them run the show until he needs to get involved, or from the get, he's going to need to get involved and say, I need you to do this. I want you to do this. You're the guys that are going to go make it happen. And when push comes to shove, if there's a struggle going on there where he's got to come in and say, make the changes, make it right, or else, and really mean the or else part. And all those things that I was just talking about, I think in some way, shape, or form, Rizzzi's shown, at least in 2 games, incredibly small sample size. He's got some irons in the fire and all that. So we'll give him credit for that. I still can't make up my mind. I could tell you right now, yeah, I think if he wins the next 6, gets the playoffs, he should be hired. 30 minutes later, I'd still be like, no, you don't go the interim coach route. 30 minutes later, I'll be somewhere in the middle. I think a more formative answer will be as the end of the season progresses and we see, are we going to keep seeing what we've seen the last 2 weeks and improvement on top of that? Because I think ultimately for him to have a shot, that's what's got to happen. He's done some of the stuff on this list already. The X's and O's even have gotten a little better because of it. The games are enjoyable to watch. You know, there was a stretch there when it was just a chore and a pure agony to watch the Saints play the 3 or 4 games before that. So hopefully we're getting back all that back to where we want it, where we need it. And I'm going to sum it up this way. That whatever the plan is, whether it's kind of continue the run the offense mostly through Taysom or whether directly or indirectly so somebody else can get easy looks, easy open space, the ability to go make plays for us because they're focused on Taysom. I don't care which way it works, probably a preference of mixture of both. I mean, the last thing I wrote on my notes is just whatever the plan is, make sure you have a plan and make sure you get it done. I think that's something Rizzzi definitely brings to the table. There's no doubt in my mind on that. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. We will have the Rizzzi conversation and coaching conversation some point this week. I don't know how deep we can get into it though, because like I said, it's really only 2 games in. So deep specifically in the Rizzzi, but I think a little deeper on the coaching we're looking for, who may be available and who may be kind of that fit. Because I don't want to say it has to be a Rizzzi type, but it probably has to be pretty close to a Rizzzi type. The other thing is too, the kick on the thing on Taysom point differential when he wasn't in game. That took a while to figure all that out. So I don't know if I can do anybody else, but it is on my agenda just for kicks and giggles at some point after the season when we're in the off season. May pull Carr because he missed so many games or any other. Just see if anybody else hits the +2 on the head or if they come close at all or if they're way off. And I don't know what it'll tell us, but it just may be an interesting show in the middle of March while we're waiting for a free agency to start. So before we kick off, let me do this real quick. Starting in about an hour and a minute, I'm going to have a discount on the merchandise store for Black and Gold. Got some Beast Mode merch that just hit. And so on the poster, the long sleeve or the short sleeve tees, they are 10% off starting in an hour till Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. Central. Yep. I'll let that scroll the rest so you can see it. And the code is Beast Mode 7, all one word, lowercase. So let's see what you guys got to say tonight. It's Poppy 504. What's up? Julius, my guy, what's going on, man? Good comment, because that's the way it should be. It's the way it used to be. And I think for teeny tiny first 2 weeks, maybe in the week, but then all of a sudden things just turned and for the worse, various reasons, not having Taysom part of it, but other factors involved too. And something I just can't put my finger on because I'm sitting in the game Sunday, and I think I mentioned this doing one of the videos during the week, and it's just like it looked and felt different on offense. It really did than it had the previous few weeks. Pretty much the same guys, more or less. Some guys coming back from injury. Maybe it's attributed to that. The play call and the scheming seemed better all of a sudden. So that might be the reason. I don't really know. But I haven't said that now because I think I just kind of figured this out in the last couple of days. When I'm sitting there watching our offense operate in the field, it looks like they were having fun out there. And when that thought hit me, I was like, yeah, they look like they were dreading being on the field for a few weeks there. So I do like that comment. Yeah, I want to see a happy, fun Saints offense like we used to have out there, and just defensive coordinators with bags under their eyes on Sunday while they're trying to coach the game. Going, man, I haven't slept a wink all week trying to figure out how to stop this. Uh, I prefer they don't sleep the whole week, but if it's the night before, I'll take that for starters. I don't know, not in the medical field, so I don't know. Maybe there is an MVS something or the other. I have no idea, but if I have time to prepare, I can say Marquez Val. See, I always screw it up, so that's why I just go MVS. That way, I don't have to worry about screwing. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'll definitely screw up, but not pronouncing it. Not at the moment, no. But he keeps dropping games like he's been dropping. I could see it in the future. I did not read the article. I was on this morning DFL, and the headline said something about that he was likely to clear waivers and then sign with a team, which I found interesting because it was like, well, if he's going to sign with a team, why wouldn't they just claim him off waivers? Unless it's and I think I answered my own question after I thought about it, going, maybe it's a contract thing where if they pick him off waivers, they may get his old nasty contract. I don't know what the rules are on that, but I'm interested to see how much truth that is. If it's the Jets, if it's somebody else, I don't. I'm trying to think. I don't even remember who the hell the Jets have backing up Rodgers if they were to bounce him right now. Yeah. Um, Now that was I watched most of that game. That is one of the most bizarrest games I've ever seen. Um, for various reasons, there was a stretch there that it seemed like the officiating crew were throwing flags on the team that was winning, which was mostly KC. But then Carolina would get back into it, and all of a sudden they're getting flagged for everything. It was just a weird game. Andy Reid normally real good at play calling. Mahomes normally pretty good at making decisions. For had a stretch there where I'm like, what are y'all doing? The sequence where they were basically first to goal from the one and came out with a field goal after 30 minutes of penalties, bad play. It was just weird. It was just so, it was almost, I don't know. I guess it's just one of those games that happened because you wouldn't think it should happen. But yeah, Carolina had a real shot at winning that game at the end. Um, he's gotta be careful how you word that or say that because as a pure quarterback, no. But I get what you're feeling because Mahomes is a guy. Mike Detillier, and I steal it all the time, use the expression tilt the field, which that special player when he's out there that he can do something and it tilts the field. All of a sudden the field's not even anymore. It's uneven in your favor. I think Kamara can do that a little bit. I think Shaheed definitely can do that. After that, you're looking at our offense. Not that there's not good ball players. I'm just trying to make that certain players can do it. So when you look at it through that lens, dear God, yes, because Mahomes can tilt the field like that, just with some of the stuff he's capable of doing, and that he can give the defense so much to worry about. And I think that is the biggest key with guys like that is when one guy forces the defense to defend multiple things. And again, going back to Rizzi's comment, Defense winds up just having to go vanilla base because they're trying to stop everything and they don't know which direction it's coming from. And it's really weird you say that about a quarterback that's not an exclusive dual threat like a Lamar, because Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are two guys that can tilt the field in a hurry. But again, going back to the game today, he's normally so pinpoint with his passing, so perfect with his reads, making sure the ball goes to the right place and all. Today, there was just a lot of, I guess maybe for him it was a bad day. And you go look at his stats, you're going to be like, yeah, but he's still Patrick Mahomes, so he's going to win games and put up you that he is. But there's been a list of alpha coaches who they were great alphas. They just weren't either the right coach, the right, you know, that kind of goes into it too. So, but just God, the interim so rarely work out. They may work out in the short term. They rarely work out in the long term for whatever reason. It scares me a little bit, but I will say this. You see, here we go. You got me flipping again, Northern. We'll say this. A lot of times the interims were guys who likely were not, they either were former head coaches that probably wouldn't have got hired again, that they're good assistants or coordinators or whatever. They'll come in as an interim and then they boom, take over. Or they come in as an interim and they're not quite ready yet to be a head coach. And so they get burned a little bit like that. And it's not a long history of them, but rarely do you say, yeah, two-time Super Bowl champion started out as, or Super Bowl coach started out as an interim. They sneak around in there. Not at the team they were interim for. I'm pretty sure there was coaches that served in the interim role, went back to being an assistant, got themselves ready to become a head coach, and it worked out for them. So it's just I don't know. But I will say this, people have said he is destined to be a head coach, and you don't normally hear that too much about interim. So there is that. And so, like I said, every 30 minutes I can change my stance on this, and it'll probably keep going on until January. Um, I don't know about Gruden, but possibly. Carr, I've had that feeling that sort of like we were talking about in the show during the week, that if there's a parting of ways and the Jets would be interested, it's not all that undifferent, which you might see happening than when the Raiders and Carr were parting of the ways, and we were heavily interested, and the Jets kind of were. And very similar situation when he comes here. So I could see possibly that working out in some way, shape, or form. I think we would likely have to restructure, but if it's a restructure that allows a trade or an easier path for him to get to the Jets, you know, he's not gonna go for league minimum by any stretch, but he may be willing to, with the understanding, well, it's just be easier to go where I want to go if I go ahead and restructure this thing and give him a break some kind of way, not to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars, but just some way where they can structure that contract where I still get my money, possibly part of it. I'm thinking of the options on Lattimore, something along that lines. Where look, we're still going to take a cap hit, but it ain't going to be the whole enchilada. And the Jets basically kind of have a contract he's going to come with that probably in the next year they would renegotiate, redistribute the money, and do whatever it is. And then theoretically, everybody's happy in the whole deal by 2026. I would say this. I think if they would hire Gruden, I think Carr, because the Jets are an interesting team. You kind of look at them and go, man, they got pieces all over the place, both offense and defense. Like that's a team that just should be so much better than they actually are. And I think that's where you got to be careful about putting all your banking all your money on a declining quarterback, because Aaron Rodgers, I think, is still capable of doing a lot of good things and probably better than some quarterbacks floating around the league. But I think what they thought they were getting was Aaron Rodgers from 8 years ago. And you're never going to see that Aaron Rodgers again. And I think in that aspect is where a lot of their problems came from. And I got to kind of wonder if Aaron Rodgers doesn't still think he's the Aaron Rodgers of 8 years ago, and that sometimes that's where some of his bad play is coming from. Reminding me a lot of when Brett Favre, who was more of a gunslinger than anybody ever, but later on in his career, just it was painful to watch because it's. And I'll give you the greatest example, as opposed to Peyton Manning, who after the neck injuries in his advanced age won a Super Bowl, realizing I am not the Peyton Manning of 5, 6, 8, 10 years ago. I'm the Peyton Manning of now, but I know enough. I can do enough that on a good team. Denver was a really good team, especially on defense that year. Hey, we can go win a Super Bowl doing this. I got enough in this arm and that bad neck to make 2 or 3 big time throws a game. That's all we're going to need to do to win. I'll know when I have to make them, and I'll make them. The rest of the time, we're going to play defense and run the ball. Kind of what they did and win a Super Bowl. So part of me is just Rodgers is thinking he's still that gunslinger that can and I think sometimes he has some good games because of it, and sometimes I think he has some really terrible games because of it. Um, I was not watching. I had Red Zone on. They were on it a lot, but I was also what was I doing at the time? Oh, cooking dinner. So a lot of times when it was happening, Red Zone was switching over, and I'd kind of like turn and see the. So I kind of know what happened, but I wasn't sitting down in front of it, watching it. And I know I probably missed some stuff when they were over doing another game or whatever. But the insanity of McLaurin's touchdown, and then I'm thinking of the Saints in Jacksonville all those years ago when Corny missed the extra point. It's like the same crap. It's like and like that's what I was saying, man. Well, about Washington, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, they looked untouchable. Like they were gonna give Philly all they want in that division with a good chance to win it, and make a solid playoff run with the rookie quarterback. And you know, I don't want to say it couldn't happen, but it just doesn't seem like the lock it was. Back in October, in the middle of October, even the end of October. Um, like I said, I the weirdness of this season, I feel like can go any which way on that. I'm glad we got him at home. Um, the biggest thing that in preview of what I'm gonna have to do some research on. So this is just kind of gut feeling because I don't really know what the Rams injury history is. I know they had some definitely on their wide receivers, but I think they're both back and healthy. Had some along the offensive line, which I think that still may be going on a little bit. And their defense has kind of been weirdly good, playing a lot of guys you never heard of and some rookies. In fact, some rookies like Cam Kinchins, who was don't remember who he played for in the college last year, but he's a rookie safety that like last couple of weeks come out of I don't know what he's doing in this game. He's come out of nowhere to be like a big play guy and kind of that thing going on. So to get a read on all that, it may be a little tough. But the one thing that I keep going back to with the damn Rams and Sean McVay is he can scheme up um, Puka and Cup wide open all game long. Stafford will hit them. They'll make big plays, gain yardage against any team in the league, but especially against the Saints. I don't know why. We never really seem to truly stop it, even in close games. Even it just seems to keep happening. So that's what scares me, that we get into a running gunfight with them like we normally do, and when we do that, we show up to the gunfight with a knife. Who we kidding? Feel a little better about the offense this year. Now the flip side of that is that was repeatedly against Dennis Allen coordinating coach defenses. We already know Rizzzi's talked about. They've made changes on the defensive line. They've made some changes in the rotations and who's going to be active on game day and where they're playing. They may continue with that. They've had a whole bye week to do more of that if they want to. So maybe that'll help somewhat that they can throw some looks at McVay that McVay will have to adjust to, or maybe the stuff he's normally dialing up when Stafford's going, which wide open receiver do I want to throw the ball to right now? None of that happens, and you can get him more in a dogfight. So I feel kind of I don't feel terrible about it like I did last year when we went to the Rams. Anybody who knew me was going, shit, we're going to get our ass kicked, and we got our ass kicked. I don't feel like that. I feel like we have a shot, but we got to show up and play ball against them for sure. And you know, we could run them out the building, they could run us out the building, or to be a close game, um, going down on the wire. But I don't. Could be wrong. Somebody may comfortably win it by like 10 points or something, but I don't feel like it. I think it's to be hard fought. It's either extremely hard fought or somebody wins. One of the two teams wins in a walk. Could be. And like I said, I think Green Bay is the one that concerns me the most out of the remaining six. We should win two, Giants and Raiders. We should win two, Giants or Raiders. I don't even want to think about the alternative, especially against the Giants. Commanders and Rams, I think, are very vulnerable. Let me put it that way. But you better show up ready to play them. Green Bay's the bugaboo, and the Bucks. The Bucks seem to be as hot and cold as we look. It wouldn't surprise me. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it wouldn't surprise me when we roll into Tampa Bay Week 18. If you looked at the point differential, suddenly we were plus 36 and they were plus 2. I mean, it seems like a wide divide, but it seems like the teams aren't really that far apart, if that makes sense. And look, I'd love for it to come down to when we roll in there and go, hey, we win this when we're in. The other thing is, I don't know and ask anybody else's schedules or anything going on, how many teams have to play each other that are above us right now, which is quite a few, but we are starting to gain some ground. Who's got who left to play? So there is a chance, like Denver last week beating Atlanta helped us. If there's any more schedules like that where it tightens up a little bit, especially where Tampa's concerned, because we would need some help, I think, to catch it. Well, obviously, we need some help to catch both those teams in the division. We could take care of Tampa with it. If it comes down to that's where it's sitting, win Tampa and then wild card. I still don't know if we're even really into that picture. Right now, I would have to guess we got to win the division. Is it cheating or is it just trying harder than everybody else? Look, as long as it ain't the damn officials from the Nolan O'Call in the building, I'm going, okay, we could probably handle almost any cheat. He'd better be. But look, they got it going on right now. I did see a good part of that game against Frisco. And I know Frisco's having their own issues right now, not having Purdy and starting. I can't even think of his last name. Allen was an issue, but Green Bay's. I think they're playing really good ball for the most part. I think really the biggest thing, if you're a Green Bay fan, you're scared of is Jordan Love throwing interceptions because it seems to be at times very turnover prone. But he played pretty well today. They had, I mean, my Lord, they couldn't tackle stupid running back who was also playing against fantasy who just drilled me today. I don't even want to talk about that anymore. But I think there's a chance, but on paper right now of the 6 teams, I think that's the one that I'm gonna go. That's going to be a tough one to win. But if 5 out of 6 get you in the promised land, 5 out of 6 will get you in the promised land. I think the other 5 are all doable. And who knows, in this crazy season where teams look invincible, start scuffling, if you hit them in that point and you're playing better and they're in their bad stretch, because it looks like just about everybody but Detroit, Kansas City has bad stretches, and I think Philly too, for that matter. They're pretty solid, but somebody else just seems to hit they may win games. during that stretch, but they just don't look like the team they were before and after that stretch. I think hopefully we just went through ours and we'll look more like the team we were before that stretch. So, all righty, bye week in the books, more or less. I think everything's kicking back off tomorrow, practice, all that other stuff. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone. And I'm going to tell you that now live because it's going to be a week before our next live show, definitely post game after the Rams. Hopefully we're all happy and hooted at, and because that's a big one. I think probably should have, when you brought up the Rams, probably should have mentioned this, Northern, but I think that game can set the tone for the next six in a lot of different ways. I mean, they always say the next game's the biggest game and the most important game, but outside of Green Bay, this might be the most important game in that 6-game stretch. Tampa Bay only becomes important if you do really well in the first 5 of that 6. So they better bring it. I think they better bring it. I think if they do bring it and there's any struggle coming out of the Rams, I like our chances. I like it a lot. But if we struggle at all and they don't, like I said, it could get ugly fast, and we got to avoid that situation at all costs. So I will be doing some. I'm gonna try to do the coaches thing, like I said, that I was planning mostly to do tonight, other than just a little bit we did on Rizzzi. Trying to get that video out. Plus, I'll definitely have the Rams, the Saints Rams, preview video by the end of the week. Also, but just nothing live because holiday weekend. Hell, I don't even know where I'll be at what time. And Thursday's completely out because that's food coma and football for me all week, all day. So yeah, totally useless. So definitely no Thursday night live show. Let's see what Northern's got. Yeah, could be the only way Tampa Bay becomes irrelevant. I think is you lose. Yeah, if you lose 2, I think you're done before Tampa Bay. And as far as Riz is concerned, I think the record's important, but I think a lot of it is how it looks doing it, if that makes sense. If it, here you go. Now I'm going to getting Northern. You ask one question, and all of a sudden my Rizzzi pendulum just swings. But going, yeah, I could see where like he goes 3-3, but it's a 3-3 where you're looking at it and going, well, they lost to Rams, Green Bay, and say Tampa Bay, or Commanders, or 3 of those teams where you had a chance to win all 3 games, and then you took care of the other 3. Like we talked about, playing better, doing, not seeing the penalties, not seeing the missed tackles, not seeing the just dumb plays, not seeing dumb coaching decisions, not hearing dumbass coaching press conferences after the game that lead you to believe, do you actually know what you're doing or not? All that stuff voids all that. It would definitely keep him in the conversation. Better results during the 6th game to go with that, where he's proven, yeah, we're fixing the culture. We're getting fundamentally better. We're getting better at roster evaluation, getting the right players on the field. We're getting better at scheming and X's and O's and teaching technique. All the stuff we were supposed to be doing these past couple of years that we weren't doing. If he starts showing that, I think that's very important stuff. And I think that's the stuff that appears to be kind of in his bag, I guess you could say. So, well, yeah, I guess the next 6 games are going to tell the tale for him about which way the wind's going to blow, and they'll definitely have a lot of this will be known better by the time we roll into that Tampa Bay game. So with that one, I think we're going to go ahead and call it a night. And like I said, have 2 or 3 videos I'll be dropping during the week. Definitely be live next Sunday night. Really hoping it's going to be a hoot at moment and a fun time like the last 2 live shows were after the games. So if you're new here, please go ahead, hit the subscribe button, like, share. Make sure you hit the notifications because trying to get it on a regular basis of when we're doing the live shows, but like you said, we had to call an audible because it's Thanksgiving. So that way, if I have to call audibles, you'll always be notified when it's going to be on. You'll be able to join in. Of course, you can keep up with the regular videos we drop during the week. So big week upcoming. Yeah, more ways than one because you got the holiday, you have Black Friday, big game against the Rams. We'll all be exhausted by Cyber Monday, but who cares? Because we're going to have a lot of good time doing it. So till I see you live next Sunday night, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.